And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys Tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
A very, very good evening to you and welcome to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Today's historic Brexit reset has been sold by the Prime Minister as a win-win for the British public.
And this deal is a win-win. It delivers what the British public voted for last year.
But critics of the deal are lining up to call the reset a capitulation and sabotage. But it certainly leaves us with more questions than answers, such as how much will this cost? How many migrants will be allowed in? And is this the death knell for the British fishing industry? To dissect all of this, I'll be joined in the studio by Brexit heavyweights, Lord Frost, Boris Johnson's former chief Brexit negotiator, who will break down exactly what this deal means for Great Britain. I will also be joined by the former Deputy Prime Minister and the avid Europhile, Lord Heseltine. What does he make of today's deal? Plus, a new report reveals that 83% of secondary schools have changed their history curriculum to decolonise it, including ludicrous claims like Stonehenge was built by black people. I'll speak to the author of that remarkable report. Welcome to the show on this historic day. Brexit reset. Is it a surrender? Is it a great deal for Britain? I'll be joined by heavyweights from the Brexit side, from the Remain side and from the Labour Party to explain precisely to you, the viewer, is this a good deal? Is it a bad deal? Is it the best for Britain? And what about the numbers? How much will it cost? How many migrants could be allowed in? And are we locked into this in future governments? Was today a great deal for Britain or a terrible deal for Britain? Get in touch the usual way, gbnews.com/you'll say. But straight away, let's have your headlines. And here's Tatiana Sanchez.
Martin, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories. Ursula von der Leyen, the European Commission President, has hailed a real chance to turn the page as the government signed a post-Brexit deal with the bloc, which the Prime Minister described as a win-win. The government claimed the reset will cut red tape for travellers and businesses, boosting the economy by £9 billion by 2040. Hailing it as good for jobs, good for bills and good for our borders, Sir Keir Starmer says it delivers on his mission to back British workers and put more money in people's pockets. But the leader of the opposition, Kemi Badenoch, says the deal is taking the UK back to the past. The deal will allow French fishing boats access to British waters for 12 years, no return to the single market or freedom of movement, and holidaymakers will be able to use electronic passport gates when travelling in and out of EU member countries. Shadow Foreign Secretary Dame Priti Patel says Labour has betrayed Brexit and Britain. Speaking this afternoon, though, the Prime Minister heralded a new era for UK and EU relations.
Britain is back on the world stage, working with our partners, doing deals that will grow our economy and putting more money in the pockets of working people. The decisions that we've taken to stabilise the economy and lead the way internationally have made Britain a place where people want to do business once again.
Meanwhile, former Prime Minister Boris Johnson believes this is a Brexit betrayal.
He wouldn't go back on Brexit, on the freedoms that the British people won in that referendum. He's done the absolute reverse. He's decided to make this country a rule taker. We're going to be taking rules from Brussels under the control of the European Court of Justice, with no ability for our Parliament our government to vary those rules.
Elsewhere, Donald Trump says Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire following his call with Vladimir Putin. The pair discussed the ongoing war in Ukraine, with President Putin reportedly saying Russia and Ukraine must find compromises that suit both sides. Ukrainian and Russian delegations failed to reach any deal during face-to-face talks in Istanbul on Friday. Writing on Truth Social, President Trump has said this evening, "I believe it went very well." His phone call with President Putin, he said Russia and Ukraine will immediately start negotiations toward a ceasefire and, more importantly, an end to the war. He says those conditions for that will be negotiated between the two parties, as it can only be because they know the details of a negotiation that nobody else would be aware of. And finally, a third man has been arrested on suspicion of arson over attacks on 2 properties and a car linked to Sir Keir Starmer. The Metropolitan Police says the 34-year-old was held in Chelsea in southwest London on suspicion of conspiracy to commit arson with intent to endanger life. His arrest follows that of 2 other men in connection with the fires, including that of a 26-year-old man who was detained on suspicion of the same offence on Saturday at Luton Airport. Those are the latest GB News headlines. For now, more from me in an hour.
For the very latest GB News direct to your smartphone, sign up to News Alerts by scanning the QR code or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Thank you, Tatiana, and welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, your host, Martin Thorby. Now, today has been a landmark day in British politics, and one that's repercussions will be felt for many, many years to come. The Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has signed the UK up to a new EU reset deal. Here's what the PM said earlier on today.
The deal is a win-win. It delivers what the British public voted for last year.
But the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, was not at all impressed, calling the deal a deliberate betrayal of Brexit.
Well, I think it's a complete and deliberate betrayal of Brexit, and it goes against what the Prime Minister said he was going to do at the election in 2024.
Now, the United Kingdom has promised the European Union a youth freedom of movement scheme, alignment on food standards, oversight from European courts and coordination on foreign policy, including what appears suspiciously close to participation in a EU army. And crucially, the UK has agreed to grant French access to its fishing waters for an astonishing further 12 years. Now, what have we got in exchange for all of this? Well, seemingly some people think nothing but warm words about potential participation in a defence pact. Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined in the studio in Westminster by the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, Emma Reynolds, MP for the Labour Party. Ms Reynolds, thank you for coming in. Appreciate your company. It's certainly divided public opinion today. As you'd expect, it's Brexit. Not everybody is going to be happy. The Prime Minister called it historic and a win-win. Explain to our viewers why you think it is a win-win deal.
Sure. So the EU is our major trading partner. 46% of our exports go to the EU market. This is a major improvement on the deal that was struck by the previous government. At the election, we promised to forge a closer relationship with the EU to benefit businesses, bringing down that friction at the border, making sure we cut the red tape in the administration for all of those businesses, some of whom gave up exporting to the EU. So good for business, particularly in food and agriculture, but other businesses too. Good for consumers because in terms of importing into the EU, that will be easier, so better consumer choice, and the supermarkets are saying lower prices at the checkout, and good for those of us who go on holiday in the European Union too, so fewer delays because UK passport holders will be able to go to the e-gates. And finally, we've established a new security and defence pact with the EU, which, given that we have an ongoing war on our continent, is really good news. So we will cooperate more closely with the European Union on those issues too.
There are a huge amount of questions. If you go through these treaties, as I am wont to do, you go through them, there are lots of questions. Perhaps I could fire a couple of those at you now. First of all, there's no such thing as a free lunch in the European Union, apart from the fact if you're an MEP, of course. How much will we have to pay into the European Union? The Swiss pay in the thick end of £391 million per year. We're 3.5 times the size of Switzerland. That could be putting us on the hook for £1 billion per year. What about youth mobility? for example, we don't know how many people, we haven't been told yet, how many people could be allowed into the UK. How does that sit with last week's position of taking back control of our borders?
So let me answer the first part of your question first. So we already contribute to the operational cost of Horizon, which is an EU research programme negotiated by the previous Conservative government. So in terms of the money going in, we will just pay our fair share to operational costs. Should we, for example, we talked about today going back into Erasmus, being an associate member of Erasmus, which will give opportunities to our young people, we would then contribute some contribution to the operational costs. It is not free movement. It is a youth mobility scheme which we have with 13 other countries around the world. The numbers will be capped and the duration...
Do we know what the cap is and do you know what the duration is?
The finer detail is going to be negotiated, but the principles are that the numbers will be capped.
Do you have an idea of what would be a reasonable cap or a reasonable time limit?
I mean, look... That will be negotiated, the finer details. But as I say, we have a youth mobility agreement with 13 other countries, and the numbers will be capped. They're, in the youth mobility schemes that we have, there's a visa involved as well. But it will give opportunities to our young people, which I took for granted my generation did when we wanted to go and study or work in the EU, and obviously that will apply to EU citizens too.
We have to talk about fishing. It's fair to say I've had several guests on my show earlier on today from the fishing community. They were using words like sold out, betrayed, thrown under the bus. They're not at all happy that we're locked in for 12 more years of tariffs. Rumour has it the EU only wanted 5. Why have you given 12 years to France and the rest of the European Union? So
this builds on the safeguards that were secured by the previous Conservative government, and it gives the industry long-term certainty about the arrangement. But it also is an improvement in that so much of our seafood is exported to the EU. 70% of our seafood is exported to the EU.
75% of British stocks are often plundered by European Union vessels. How is that a good deal for Britain?
Well, look, we have reciprocal rights too, but in terms of exporting to the EU, shellfish, which some of shellfish was banned to be exported to the EU thanks to the changes brought in after Brexit. So we are freeing up, we're taking away those barriers, so we'll have exports of shellfish and other seafood into the EU, which will be made easier and cheaper by the deal that we struck today. We've also announced a £360 million transformation fund for our fishing industries to help coastal communities, to help reskill and develop our fishing industry across the country.
Can I ask you about reports that these deals will be locked in even for a future government? So the 12-year deal could be negotiated by a future government, but the penalty for that would be tariffs, Donald Trump-style tariffs from the European Union against British businesses. Why would a British Prime Minister give so much away to the European Union?
Well, we've protected the fishing industry from tariffs, and we have safeguarded the rights that they had under the previous deal negotiated by the previous Conservative government, and we've given the industry longer-term certainty. But as I've said, we've also brought down those barriers to those who export to the EU and made it cheaper and easier for them to do that. So that'll be a benefit to those fishermen and women who fish that stock that is destined for the EU, and it will make sure that they are in a better position economically alongside this transformation fund, which I just talked about.
Chris Hope, our political editor, asked the European Council President Antonio Costa today if this was the end of the road to rejoin. He said yes, he didn't want that. Can you confirm, is this the end of any attempt by a Labour government to get us back into the European Union, or is this something altogether different, negotiating away power treaty by treaty, one at a time?
Well, we said very clearly in our manifesto that we would not rejoin the customs union, the single market, or go back into free movement, and it is certainly not. We are not going to be rejoining the European Union. We respect the vote that was held some years ago. Gosh, it feels like a long time ago, doesn't it? But we did say in our manifesto that we would improve on the deal that we had with the EU. This deal today brings massive economic benefits for businesses that export to the EU. The EU is our major trading partner, and it also brings benefits to those of us who go on holiday to European Union countries, and security and defence, the partnership. That is a real benefit too in terms of our security. And given that we have an ongoing war on our continent, that is, in an insecure world, that is not to be neglected too.
What would you say to those people? Remember, the Prime Minister said he felt more at home in Davos than in Westminster. Does this kind of deal today suggest actually Keir Starmer's more at home in Brussels?
Well, the Switzerland isn't a member of the EU, so that's probably worth saying. Look, the Prime Minister has negotiated a deal which is good for British business, good for British consumers and good for British holidaymakers who have been subject to massive delays at European borders. They will now be able to go, once this deal is in place on this issue, to e-gate, so they don't have to queue to get into countries across the European Union.
It looks like there are going to be rebellions for the Labour Party on the winter fuel allowance, on PIP cuts, on benefits cuts, on farming. Do you think you now might face a substantial revolt in the Red Wall, in coastal communities who are trying to sell to their constituents what many people in the Red Wall are saying feels like a betrayal of Brexit, and certainly on the coast, saying that the Labour Party has just sold our fishing industry down the river?
This is not a betrayal of Brexit. We promised the British people that we would forge a closer relationship in a pragmatic and commonsensical way with our nearest and biggest trading partner. That's good for British business and it's good for British consumers because it will bring food bills down and it will allow our businesses who export to the EU much easier path to doing those exports, some of whom had already given up due to the barriers that have been put up. So this is a pragmatic solution to improving the deal that we inherited from the last government, which was no good for business and wasn't good for consumers either.
OK, Emma Reynolds, the Economic Secretary to the Treasury, thank you very much for coming in. See us tonight at GB News. Pleasure to have your company. Thank you very, very much indeed. Now, after the break, I'll be joined by Boris Johnson's former chief Brexit negotiator, Lord Frost, the guy they called Frosty the No Man. He's accused Labour of trying to sabotage Brexit, but I'll be asking him, was it all down to his own watered-down Brexit deal that made this even possible in the first place? You will not want to miss it.
Westminster, the ultimate clique. And you're fighting like rats in a sack. But here on the Camilla Tominey Show, we ask the questions the establishment media is too scared to ask. OK, let me ask you a straight question, because I know you're a straight-talking politician. Whether it's net zero, illegal immigration or law and order, nothing is off-limits. You had the power then.
Yeah, as I
and
say,
now you've lost it. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show that's fearless. But no, let me finish my question if you don't mind, because it is my show. Sundays at 9:30, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
A very good morning to you. And if you're planning to visit one of Britain's many beauty spots next bank holiday or Easter weekend, beware of your car.
Yeah, a rising number of tourist attractions are banning coaches and some cars to help ease overcrowding.
We're here to debate if vehicles should be stopped from parking near attractions. Government Relations Manager at the Countryside Alliance, David Bean, and founder of Fair Fuel UK campaign, Howard Cox. Good morning to you both.
David, how much of a problem are tourists when there are too many of them and they bring their great camper vans and they park all their cars in a line so you actually can't see the beauty spot you went to see? How much of a problem is it?
It can be a significant problem in certain areas. I'm in Scotland for the holidays, and particularly in areas such as the Highlands and Islands, there are areas that have very, very badly been affected. Even some camper vans end up getting taken out to certain places on the islands and then just abandoned after a holiday is finished.
Honestly, this is horses for courses, and to be fair, You know, I actually do believe that we need better signage, better planning, and Cameron hit the nail on the head. You can't get to these beauty spots unless you have some sort of transport to get there. And, you know, public transport is woeful across the country in these areas. Obviously, yesterday in the Berlin Gap one, you can't legislate for idiots. It needs better signage, better information, but if you take people away from it, you take income away from the community. You know, I think any organisation that's promoting a beauty spot that's making money out of it should be paying for better signage, better parking facilities, etc. I do not like the idea of cars being, you know, queuing up illegally, you could say. That's ridiculous.
GB News, the People's Channel.
No matter the state it's in, this is our nation. Join me, Jacob Rees-Mogg, for a genuine, honest discussion on where we have been, where we are going, and where we are with the people who set the direction. That's State of the Nation every Monday and Tuesday at 8 o'clock, only on GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubney. Now, the former Prime Minister, Boris Johnson, has slammed today's EU reset deal. Speaking to GB News earlier on, he hit out at the deal like this.
He wouldn't go back on Brexit, on the freedoms that the British people won in that referendum. He's done the absolute reverse. He's decided to make this country a rule taker. We're going to be taking rules from Brussels under the control of the European Court of Justice, with no ability for our Parliament, our government, to vary those rules.
Strong words there from Boris Johnson, but wasn't it his own so-called oven-ready deal that allowed this Brexit backtrack to be even possible? Well, I'm delighted to say I'm joined in the studio now by the former chief Brexit negotiator, Lord Frost. Lord Frost, welcome to the show.
Great to be here.
Pleasure to have your company. I saw a briefing earlier on. You didn't mince your words. Sell out Starmer and the Surrender Summit. Tell us, Lord Frost, why you think today is a terrible deal for Britain.
Well, it's a much worse deal than I thought it was going to be, I must say, even over the weekend, thinking about it. What has he done? He's put us back in the single market for agri-food, no say in the rules that we have to apply. He's going to put us back in the single market for electricity. He's going to make us abide by the EU's net zero rules. He's sold away our fishing waters for 12 years, and we're going to have to pay for all of this. It's astonishing, really, that that he's gone down this road. Really, every possible concession's just been thrown out. And what have we got back? We've got a defence agreement that basically involves showing up to a load of meetings. I mean, good, because then it doesn't challenge NATO, but why pay so much for such a deal? And we've got an E-Gate deal which, you know, really doesn't amount to anything, as far as I can see.
Lord Frost, I have to push back slightly on fishing. I've been joined by people from the fishing community earlier on my other show who were saying, was it actually the deal that the Conservatives did, which was slammed as a botched deal at the time, which left the cat flap unscrewed to Brussels? It allowed today's further surrender of quotas because fishing never really got done properly in Brexit version 1 when you were in charge.
Well, what we agreed back in 2020 was a transition period, and those are kind of normal in trade deals. We agreed a longer one than we wanted, 5.5 years, but at the end of it, everything went back to normal. We got full control of our waters. We're allowed to negotiate year on year. If we didn't like the EU's, where those negotiations were getting to, we could exclude them from our waters and fish them as we wished.
But they could have pushed back on other things. For example, power supply. It did lock us into being at the mercy of punitive measures from the EU if we did try and get those quotas back towards British fishermen.
Well, all trade deals include provisions for, you know, potential retaliation and tariffs and dispute settlement and so on. There's nothing particularly unusual in that. The important thing is that what we agreed came to an end, would have come to an end next year. Now it's going to go on for another 12 years. And really, that really makes it very difficult for the fishing industry to recover by catching fish that are in our waters.
OK, Lord Frost, if you could bear with us, we're joined now by another Brexit heavyweight. I'm joined by Lord Heseltine, the former Deputy Prime Minister of the Conservative Party. Lord Heseltine, a pleasure to have your esteemed company. You once called Brexit a pack of lies, and you called for the United Kingdom to rejoin the European Union. What's your take on today's deal?
It's a step in the right direction. It's no more than that, but I welcome the fact that there's a different spirit and a different quality of dialogue. And people are talking as colleagues, as they ought to have done throughout the history of Europe, as opposed to fighting each other endlessly. So at least now we're back at the table. But it's a start and no more than that. Of course, like most people, I haven't yet been able to read the details. But from what I've read and what I've seen and what I've heard, this is a step in the right direction.
Well, Lord Heseltine, one of the details that leaps out is the fact that in any future renegotiations of fishing rights, for example, even a future government would be subjected to potential tariffs from the European Union. Is that really a step in the right direction? If we try and negotiate in favour of British fishermen, fisherwomen, we could face a Donald Trump trade war from the European Union.
Yes, well, of course, Boris Johnson and his colleagues landed us with this deal. It's quite interesting to listen to Lord Frost trying to pretend that what they've done for 5.5 years was wonderful, whereas what now has happened for 12 years is a scandal. And it's typical of the Brexiteer duplicity. They had no real policies. They didn't know what they were doing. We were promised a bonfire of controls, and there they've been in power for years now. There's been no bonfire of controls because they suddenly woke up to the fact that the controls they were talking about were about people's safety, people's health, people's life conditions, about the trading conditions for business, and all those things. And so when they got into power, having told a pack of lies, they were confronted with the truth. And the truth is that the single market was Margaret Thatcher's greatest achievement. The British civil servants went and negotiated on behalf of this country and came up with an incredible deal where 20-odd countries in Europe pooled their rules and regulations so that the industries of Europe could trade within the market on the sort of scale that the Chinese and the Americans take for granted.
OK, Lord Heseltine, it might be an appropriate moment now to bring Lord Frost back into this conversation. Lord Frost, you heard there down the barrel quite clearly. Lord Heseltine says you were duplicitous, your government, you didn't know what you were doing, and you told the British public a pack of lies. What's your response?
Well, I'm sorry such an elder statesman of the Conservative Party resorts to language like that. Those who lost the Brexit referendum often do say that they lost because of lies on the other side. Simply not true. They lost the argument. What we have tried to do for the time since then is put in place a deal which gives us all that we wanted, which was simply to govern ourselves on the basis of our own laws and make our own decisions. And all through that period, far too many people have tried to stop that, have tried to hamstring us, to prevent exit, to make difficult what happened after the exit. And we need to get this back on track, but unfortunately today's deal, which has pushed us back towards the single market, is going to make that much more difficult.
There you go, Lord Heseltine, you lost the argument and the inference there, you're consumed with bitterness.
Well, of course, this is another misreading of history. The reason they won by a narrow majority is because they whipped up the anti-immigration mood in the country. And of course, we all fully understand. We saw it with Enoch Powell in the 60s. We saw it with Mosley in the 30s. It's nothing new. It is one of the most toxic of human emotions. And that was turned into the get our country back and all that sort of stuff. Actually, what it's done is to leave exactly the same problems with immigration as we had before, but Britain isolated in the world, apart from Europe, increasingly difficulties with America, and we're suddenly told that we're in charge and that things are getting better. They're not getting better. They were never going to get better. There's no reputable forecaster claiming that they are better or are going to get better, and yet we still get all these arguments peddled about Britain being in charge.
There you go, Lord Frost, you are channeling the spirit of Enoch Powell.
Well, it's nonsense, I'm afraid. The main reason that people voted to leave the European Union, and the polling after that shows this, is that they wanted to set rules for Britain in Britain. Of course, immigration was part of that. Of course, we allowed it to go far too high since then, and that's what's happened. There are plenty of reputable forecasters who don't agree with the doomsayers about the British economy and trade, and there are plenty who predict a prosperous future for the UK outside the EU, and I would certainly agree with them.
Lord Heseltine, isn't it also fair to say that the deal you're saying is a step in the right direction today was tabled by Sir Keir Starmer, who also wants to control immigration? It's not fair to say that every political party that has an accurate bellwether reading of the British electorate would agree. This isn't about Enoch Powell, it's about political realities.
Yes, but the Enoch Powell speech was about stirring racialism. And I know, because I was involved in the employment conditions of the time, in employment agencies, hotels, I know exactly what was going on at the time, and I know what Enoch Powell was stirring and stoking up. And what Nigel Farage has been a past master at doing is rebuilding on those arguments. Get our country back. What do you think he means? He means actually stopping the immigrants. And
Lord Heseltine, Nigel Farage isn't a part of this deal today. What about Sir Keir Starmer? He said we're turning into a nation, an island of strangers. Is he also echoing Enoch Powell?
Yes, but the fact of the matter is that immigration is a much bigger and longer-term problem than is being adequately dealt with in the political debate. Both the big parties are frightened of reform, and therefore they pander around the fringes of the issue. The truth is that immigration can only be dealt with on a European scale. The immigrants coming across the Channel are not French. They're not Europeans. They are actually people from outside Europe. And the only way
from France.
to actually police Europe is to do so across the borders of the Adriatic and the Mediterranean and Turkey. And that can only be done by a combined European agreement.
OK, let's put that to Lord Frost's final word. The only way to cut down immigration, the only way to control our borders is to comply more with the European Union.
The only way to control our borders is to control our borders, and that's what the Rwanda scheme was about. I agree, actually, with Lord Heseltine that this problem is longer and deeper rooted. We thought there were 3 million EU citizens in the UK. When we counted them, there were 6 million. The truth is that immigration from all sources has been out of control for a long time. All parties actually bear a degree of responsibility for that. Voters, people of this country are fed up with it and they want something done about it, and that's what's driving the politics of it, not the other way around.
Lord Heseltine, final word to you. It seems it's people such as yourself who are out of touch with the political realities. People want to take back control of our borders.
Yes, of course they do. But how do you do that when actually you have no powers to do it? And the only way you can do it is to do it with some sort of quasi-military force across the Adriatic and the Mediterranean and the Turkish border. It is a huge issue, and it's going to get worse because climate change is going to erode coastal communities who will be seeking to go. And what one has to take into account, and it's uncomfortable, but it's the truth, that everybody in the world today has got one of these. And if you happen to be sitting in sub-Saharan Africa, you can see the standards of living which we enjoy in Europe. And it's not the idlers and shirkers who are coming here. It's a particularly younger generation who say, I want to share in all of that. And
why should it be our responsibility to allow all of those people with mobile phones and money and able-bodied ability to get here, coming through multiple safe nations? Why is it our job to simply let them roll in, Lord Heseltine?
The answer to your question is very simple. It is our responsibility to control our borders, but you cannot do it alone apart from Europe. And you see, what people never ask the question, why should the French stop any of those people leaving France? They're not French. They're illegal immigrants in France. And our responsibility should be to try to help the French, stopping them getting to Europe in the first place.
OK, let me put that final point to Lord Frost. Lord Frost, we do that already. We pay £500 million a year to the French. It's having no effect. In fact, it's getting worse.
Yeah, I mean, there are far too many links in that causal chain. The best way to control our borders is to control our own borders, provide a proper deterrent for people who come here so that they don't get to stay. Of course, we can work with the French. We should try and work with the French and others. But it's our responsibility to control our borders, and that's where I would stop.
OK, we have to leave it there. A battle of two esteemed Brexit heavyweights. Thank you very much, Lord Frost and Lord Hesselstein, for joining us on GBN Tonight. Excellent stuff. Now, up next, the government has signed over British fishing waters to Brussels for 12 more years in a move that's been branded disastrous by members of the fishing community. Just how bad is that deal? Plus, former Labour Minister Baroness Hoey will join me to assess the reset. Is this the final straw that broke the camel's back and betrayed traditional working-class Labour voters? That's next.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, we'll see a mix of sunshine and showers, though the odd shower could be heavy, perhaps even bringing the odd rumble of thunder, but feeling a little warmer into the afternoon compared to today. And taking a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure situated to the north of the country, though at times this drags in a northeasterly flow of air, so that brings in more cloud, more moisture drifting in from the North Sea, so it could lead to a murky start across eastern parts of England, though it should be largely dry. The odd shower still possible across northern parts of England, central parts of England and Wales, but many towns and cities holding up in the mid to high single figures. So to start the day across Scotland, once again largely dry, fairly bright, particularly across the west. There's still that lingering low cloud across some eastern counties, a bit of a breeze across the northeast too, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England. Largely dry, though still that low cloud bringing quite a murky feel to the start of the day across eastern parts of England. But across the rest of England and Wales, fairly similar, largely dry and bright, and a fairly mild start to the day, warming up nicely too, particularly as we head into the afternoon, and remaining dry though, any cloud pushing back towards eastern counties where it may linger for much of the day. And as we head into the afternoon, there is a risk of showers, particularly across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern parts of England. The odd shower turning heavy, possibly even thundery later into the afternoon, but largely dry for most, plenty of sunshine to go around and feeling warm, highs of around 23 degrees Celsius. Very different day on offer across central and southern parts as we head into Wednesday. More cloud, outbreaks of rain and also showers. Once again, this could turn heavy at times. But for Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England, largely dry and bright after a chilly start and remaining dry to end the week before a return of the rain and showers as we head towards the bank holiday weekend and temperatures on the downturn.
Hi, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and my show is your opportunity to cut through all the noise and dive in headfirst to some robust debates. Ideas clash.
Situation, isn't it? Because the failure is...
You're deliberately avoiding my point. Nothing's held back.
And if you think this is the end of it, wait for more.
And we do not shy away from the difficult stuff. Sometimes I want to shake people and say, if only you understood. So join me on Jubes & Co. weeknights at 6 p.m, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters, real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
In fact, this chap made a good start. No.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up? About 10.
So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m, only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, your host, Martin Daubry. Now, this evening at 9 p.m, of course, is Patrick Christys Tonight. And tonight, Ben Leo is stepping into those big shoes where Patrick takes a well-earned break. Ben, what's on your menu?
Yeah, I think Patrick has gone to seek the sun in Calais, maybe. He had such a good time there last week. He's gone back. Yeah, only joke. He's gone somewhere probably a bit nicer than Calais. Look, the Brexit betrayal today, I think, was just that. But do you know what, Martin? What makes me laugh is Labour and even the Prime Minister's official account on X, Twitter, tweeting about passport e-gates. I don't know about you or viewers at home. I have never, ever since Brexit been stuck in a queue at passport control. The only time was during the blackouts in Madrid a few weeks ago? And also, how out of touch is this government, thinking that the top priority of people who are majoritively skint, struggling to put their heads, keep their head above water, caring about passport e-gates? And by the way, is that worth a surrender of British fishing rights for 12 years? Elsewhere, a very interesting amendment being tabled tonight in the Lords from Lord Toby Young to Angela Rayner's Workers' Rights Bill. So they want, Lord Young and others, including Baroness Fox, want to have right-wing political views in the workplace protected under that Workers' Rights Bill. Lord Young is saying that left-of-centre views are protected by default, but if you speak out at work on, say, immigration or the small boats crisis, you're more inclined to be punished by your employer. And finally, Martin, I don't know if you like Greggs, I think you're probably fond of a sausage roll or two, but from here on, they will be putting sandwiches and drinks behind secure counters because people keep nicking stuff from their shops. San Francisco, eat your heart out.
Superb stuff. A meaty menu, always designed to deliver. That's Ben Leo on Patrick Christys tonight from 9 p.m. on GB News. Cheers. Now back to our top story today, and it's that EU reset deal that sent shockwaves of controversy across the country. My next guest thinks that the deal will alienate traditional Labour voters. And joining us now is Baroness Kate Hoey, the former chair of the Northern Ireland Affairs Select Committee, of course, for many years was a Labour Party MP. Kate Hoey, welcome to the show. Pleasure to have your company. When I had an exchange with you earlier on today, not only were you outspoken very much on fishing, but also the impact on the Labour Party, its reputation could be forever tarnished. Do you think that there's any way back for Sir Keir Starmer now?
Well, I think Keir Starmer, as a Prime Minister, has had probably, we know he's had the worst polling records ever in such a short time. And I know that there's talk about them going to go back on certain issues, you know, like the winter fuel payments and so on. But I think the public now has really wakened up to the fact that many of them regretting very much that they voted Labour and realising that Keir Starmer seems to be now, in my view, more in support and wanting to be close to the European Union than actually thinking about British people. And, you know, you have to remember he has been a Remainer, a Europhile for many, many years. And he was the person who led as the Labour Shadow Europe Minister, those awful 3 years when we had to keep fighting to just get Brexit over the line. Now, the deal we got, and I think the Conservatives would admit that, was not good enough, and it didn't do well enough on fishing, and it left Northern Ireland out. But what we've got now is Sir Keir Starmer turning his back on all those red wall seats who voted for Brexit, who then voted Conservative, who then went back to being Labour at the last election, and I think now will be sitting ready to vote reform at the next opportunity they get.
Do you think that the Labour Party has a fundamental misunderstanding of things like fishing? They say, oh, it's only 1% of GDP, but it's not about GDP. It's about something intrinsic. It's about British industry. The same, I think, actually, we saw with pensioners. It's not about £1.5 billion. It's about something more important. Is this government just led by fiscal rules and a slavishness to money while missing the bigger point of how emotive things like fishing and pensions are?
Well, I think they've lost touch with what, you know, it sounds funny, but just with inverted commas, ordinary people and their aspirations. And the fishing is not just about the fishermen and women who go out on fishing boats. It's about the whole way that then leads to lots of other jobs and the whole communities of those coastal towns that have been abandoned and felt so abandoned by Boris, actually, after that deal. But at least they thought, well, in 5 years' time, we'll be able to get this back and we can then cooperate and decide how much we're going to allow Europe. And I think what has been so really despicable of the Prime Minister was his cozying up to Macron and has got absolutely nothing. I mean, why didn't he say, well, at least, Macron, will you take back some of the people or all of the people who are coming over illegally, that we're paying you money to stop coming? He didn't ask about that. And now they're parroting this ridiculous idea that somehow, you know, going faster when you go on holiday, if you go on holiday or can afford to go on holiday to Europe, that you'll go through quicker. And as many people have said, it's never been a problem, it's never been an issue. And indeed, we allow and have always continued to allow, and I raised it a number of times, we've been allowing European citizens to come through our lines at Heathrow and other airports. So he has not been, the problem really about these negotiations, Martin, is it's been two sides negotiating on the one side, if that makes sense. I mean, he has wanted a closer relationship. He has wanted to get a drip approach that will allow it and make it much, much easier. But hopefully, to go back in, hopefully, by the time we get to that next stage, he will have seen that his policies are not acceptable amongst the British public, certainly not in Labour areas. And we see a lot more by-elections, a lot more wins for non-Labour Party politicians, and we will see a general election that will turf this government out.
OK, Baroness Kate Hoey, thank you very, very much for joining us on GBN Tonight. It's a pleasure to have your expertise and your company. Thank you. Now, Keir Starmer has handed over access to British fishing waters for another full 12 years, what has been described by many as a disaster by members of the fishing community. And joining us now is Elspeth MacDonald, the Chief Executive of the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. Elspeth, welcome to the show. You were withering in your appraisal of this deal earlier on. Tell GBN viewers tonight your appraisal of what Keir Starmer is calling a win-win.
Well, it's certainly not a win for my members. It's not a win for the Scottish fishing industry. In fact, it's a disastrous deal for the Scottish fishing industry. The Prime Minister has essentially given away 12 years of access to UK waters for nothing in exchange for our fishing industry. So there are a huge number of unhappy fishermen and women that also go to sea fishing around the coast in Scotland who are very unhappy with this deal and are actually astonished that the Prime Minister has signed up to this. It's a terrible deal for our industry.
But Elspeth, we're told that this £360 million injected into the industry will be a lifeline, and we're told continuing and increased access for things like shellfish to the European Union will be a lifeline.
Well, I think it's important to remember that trade works in two directions. So yes, we export not just seafood, but all kinds of products to the EU, and the EU also export all sorts of products to the UK. In fact, there's a huge surplus in trade from the EU to the UK. So to trade away access to our fishing waters, which is hugely advantageous to the EU, for something that actually benefits both parties is not a fair trade. It's a terrible deal to do. And we are yet to see the detail of this alleged £360 million fund. We don't know how that will work. We don't know who will have access to it. We've no idea how that will be distributed around the UK or when it will be coming forward. So it very much just feels like that's just a bung of money to basically try and soften the blow for our fishing industry.
I think you're exactly right. There are so many questions still to be answered about today's deal. Thank you so much for joining us. That's Elspeth MacDonald, the Chief Executive of the Scottish Fishermen's Federation. Thanks for your company. Now, to end the show with something completely different. Brace yourselves, because a new report reveals that 83% of secondary schools have changed their history curriculum to decolonise it, including ridiculous claims that Stonehenge was built by black people. I'll speak to the author of that remarkable report, and that's next.
Dinner under the stars tonight?
That reminds me of our travel insurance.
You mean All Clear Skies?
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Hello. Well, looking further afield, there are heavy showers around with the risk of thunderstorms, but mixed with plenty of warm, sunny spells. So across Madeira, the Canary Islands, fine and dry on Tuesday. Likewise for much of Spain and Portugal. But we do have this area of low pressure bringing heavy spells of showers and thunderstorms across parts of Europe. Plenty of sunshine further towards the east and feeling warm here too. Otherwise, sunshine and showers, highs of 26.
All Clear Travel Insurance sponsors GBNews Travel Destinations Forecast.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you Spread the word.
Westminster's full of talk, but out here, it's the real world.
Am I allowed to talk now?
No, that's it. This is where it matters. Real people and real lives. That's what politics is all about.
The fact that Trump made a good start, no.
Straight answers, no spin, and just a couple of pints.
How many fingers have I got up?
About 10. So join me for Lee Anderson's Real World every Friday at 7 p.m. only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m. weekdays here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christys tonight, and here we do things differently.
It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it?
It's explosive.
I mean, this is very good.
It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and he did nothing.
It's controversial.
And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born.
It's everything you need to kickstart your evening.
Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it.
That's Patrick Christys tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akwe, for an informative, interactive news programme with a difference. It's fun.
No, he didn't say that, Dave.
I'm so surprised.
I think there's an element of truth to that.
Join me from 3 p.m. every weekend, only on GB News, Britain's news channel.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, and as you know, we always love to hear your views. Now, there's a new way of getting in touch with us at gbnews.com/yoursay. By commenting, you can be part of a live conversation and join our GB News community. You can even talk to me, Bev Turner, or any of the members of the GB News family.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens.
With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK,
we're ready to keep you up to date with what's happening every half an hour, every single day. Bulletins here on GB News,
the People's Channel,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to GBN Tonight with me, Martin Daubney. Now, an astonishing new report reveals that 83% of secondary schools have changed their history lessons to decolonise the curriculum. And in some cases, it's gone way too far because among the contested claims now being taught as fact is that black people built Stonehenge. And meanwhile, key moments of real British history are being dropped. Fewer than 1 in 5 schools now teach the Battle of Agincourt, and just 11% include Trafalgar or Waterloo. Well, joining us now is Zachariah Marsh, the Research Fellow in Education at the Policy Exchange, who published this report. Zachariah, tell me, how can it be possible that people of colour built Stonehenge? Were there, I don't know, some sort of Stone Age Windrush generation?
Well, I think the concern that we've got here is that clearly what's happened is that views that are well outside the historical mainstream are being brought into schools and taught as fact as part of one-sided and politicised narratives. And that isn't necessarily the fault of the teachers themselves. What we found in our report is that there's a huge number of resources out there, and often time-poor teachers are being misled into embracing resources which on the face of it look professionally designed, but have actually been put together by activist organisations designed to push a very particular version of the past. And that's a massive disservice to children in our schools.
So how does this fantasy become fact? Stonehenge was no more built by black people than I'm an astronaut.
Exactly. And as you say, the issue has been that particularly since 2020, we've seen a massive uptick in organisations that have not traditionally been involved with history teaching, producing resources that are designed to be adopted by teachers in classrooms. And while some of those resources have been very, very good, others have been intentionally designed to push these one-sided narratives. And what our report, Policy Exchange, shows is that far too often these are being translated into classrooms. You mentioned Stonehenge, but we've also found examples of, let's say, a major subject organisation suggesting that Emperor Nero was married to a trans person. All of these quite bizarre ideas that are well outside mainstream historical opinion, but which organisations have shoehorned into the history curriculum in certain schools.
Well, Zachary Marsh, thank you for, I think, cheering us up with this madness. Research fellow in education at the Policy Exchange, thank you very, very much indeed. Now, coming next, of course, State of the Nation with that man, Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. No doubt massive on your agenda is the Brexit reset.
It is indeed, and thinking of Stonehenge reminded me of when the Common Market comes to Stanton Drew, which actually has better stones than at Stonehenge, because it's, of course, in Somerset. Of course, I'm going to be talking about this extraordinary surrender for which we're going to pay. We're going to give the EU cash. Taxes will go to fund the European Union to tell us what to do. It's almost an abusive relationship that I cannot understand why Starmer has agreed to this, but we're going to take rules from them. We're going to have even more of the green nonsense. Just as everyone's realising the net zero is making us cold and poor, we're going to take EU regulations on net zero. And the betrayal of the fishing communities, I know you've been discussing that, is absolutely monstrous. And fishing may not be the biggest part of the economy, but most people in this country care about the fishermen and that they will have a lot of support. And there'll be real anger with this because it's the elite holding the voters in contempt. It's Starmer thinking he's no better. What was he said? He prefers Davos to Westminster. And this just proves it. He prefers oligarchy ruled by the elite to democracy. And he's going to make us pay for the privilege.
Got a quick 40 seconds. What about the notion that we might be tied into these deals for 12 years, even a future government?
A future government can always tear up foreign deals, that international treaties get broken, and anything that comes into UK law can be overridden by Parliament. The great thing is that we've left the EU and therefore its law is not superior law in this country anymore. So Parliament can override it. And I think, and I'm glad to hear she's been saying this, Kemi Badenoch and, of course, Nigel Farage have both been saying they will pull out of all these deals if they were to win an election.
OK, we have to leave it there. State of the Nation with Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg. That's next. I'll be back tomorrow from 3 till 6. What a day it's been in the great Brexit reset. State of the Nation is next, but first, here's your weather.
There will be a light breeze in the morning, leading to a warm front. Boxed heat pumps, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good evening. Welcome to your GB News weather update from the Met Office. As we head into tomorrow, we'll see a mix of sunshine and showers, though the odd shower could be heavy, perhaps even bringing the odd rumble of thunder, but feeling a little warmer into the afternoon compared to today. And taking a look at the bigger picture, we've got high pressure situated to the north of the country, though at times this drags in a northeasterly flow of air, so that brings in more cloud, more moisture drifting in from the North Sea. So it could lead to a murky start across eastern parts of England, though it should be largely dry. The odd shower still possible across northern parts of England, central parts of England and Wales, but many towns and cities holding up in the mid to high single figures. So to start the day across Scotland, once again largely dry, fairly bright, particularly across the west. There's still that lingering low cloud across some eastern counties, a bit of a breeze across the northeast too, and fairly similar across Northern Ireland, northern parts of England. Largely dry, though still that low cloud bringing quite a murky feel to the start of the day across eastern parts of England. But across the rest of England and Wales, fairly similar, largely dry and bright, and a fairly mild start to the day, warming up nicely too, particularly as we head into the afternoon, and remaining dry though, any cloud pushing back towards eastern counties where it may linger for much of the day. And as we head into the afternoon, there is a risk of showers, particularly across Northern Ireland, southern Scotland, northern parts of England. The odd shower turning heavy, possibly even thundery later into the afternoon, but largely dry for most, plenty of sunshine to go around and feeling warm, highs of around 23 degrees Celsius. Very different day on offer across central and southern parts as we head into Wednesday. More cloud, outbreaks of rain and also showers. Once again, this could turn heavy at times. But for Northern Ireland, Scotland, northern parts of England, largely dry and bright after a chilly start and remaining dry to end the week before a return of the rain and showers as we head towards the bank holiday weekend and temperatures on the downturn.
Expect a warm front, moving from the kitchen right through to the rest of the house. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
What does it feel like to be a Great British Giveaway winner?
That's a big surprise. Nice.
Oh my God, I'm going to cry.
Do you know what? I've never won anything like this in my life.
Oh my God, this is amazing.
That is absolutely fantastic.
We're over the moon.
Yes, that is fantastic.
You know, you have no idea how much I needed it. Oh my goodness. wonderful. Oh, thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I was gobsmacked. Thank you, GB News.
I'd say don't hesitate, do it. If you're not in it, you've got no chance of winning it.
Thank you.
You weren't expecting to get that call today, were you?
No, I wasn't.
You really could be our next big winner. Head over to gbnews.com/win now to find out how and get your entry for the Great British Giveaway. Great prizes, even greater wins.
Mornings don't have to be tiresome, especially if you have the right company.
Wake up to news as it happens, opinion and debate, and of course, a little bit of entertainment too.
Because when the kettle's on, we're on.
That's Breakfast on GB News, a show worth waking up for.
Every morning from 6 a.m.
Only on the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We'll spread the news, you spread the word.
From the school run to the home run, watch a new show for all of Britain.
So he can say whatever he wants.
A straight-talking show where all voices are heard.
And, you know, when are we going to stop talking about smashing the gangs and actually do it?
With the stories that matter from every part of our country.
There's a bit of a crash landing there for your Chancellor.
Bold, fearless and standing up for you. That's me, Martin Daubney, 3 p.m. till 6 p.m, weekdays, here only on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Exciting news. Every Friday, my Patrick Christys Tonight show is going to have a twist to it. We're welcoming some special guests. You. That's right, on Fridays I'm going to be doing my show in front of a live studio audience because this show is about you and what you have to say. It's going to be the same big debates, same big topics, same big opinions. But every Friday night at 9 p.m, you are invited to come on down to Patrick Christys Tonight to be a part of the